Today we will talk about how to create a comparison chart in Power BI. So here we have is the sales of petroleum product by state marketing area, and we have a line chart in our report. So at the bottom axis we have the years, and on our y-axis we have the amount for as our values, and then we have for our legend we have the state. So whenever we select these items, it will be split by state. So how are we going to do a multiple selection comparison? For example, if I were to compare New South Wales and Northern Territory as a single selection, and then maybe my selection two, I would like to do Queensland and Northern Territory. So how do we do it? So let's look at another page that we already done. So for our selection one, we can choose two different state, and for our selection two, we can maybe choose three state so that we can do our selection comparison. So how do we do this type of comparison chart? So in order to do that, let's look at our data source, which is we will take a new data source, our Australia sales table, and look at how our data source looks like. Here we have our slicer, which we slice by the state, field type, and market. And then this is the year for our line chart and the amount. So in order to do a selection based chart or comparison chart, first we will need to do two dimension for our selection or two table for our selection. So since we will be slicing using these three column, we will use this three column as our new selection table. So to do that, we will need to duplicate this table. We will select these three column, and then we will remove other column. We will remove duplicates. We will create a unique ID for this selection. Add column. We will call it selection ID. So this will be our selection one. We'll do the similar thing for selection two. So we will just need to duplicate it and then call it selection two. So for our fact table, we will map the selection ID to our fact table. To do that, we just need to select our main table over here, home, merge query, and then select anyone will do because the selection one and selection two are the same. So these three will be our slicer selection. Then we will pull out the selection ID. So let's close and apply. So in our new table over here, let's just look at our data model. So over here, this is a disconnected table where the selection table are not connected to our fact table. So we will use that to calculate the amount that we want for our selection and pull it in our line chart. So how do we do it? For our selection, we will place all the variables information first. So I would like to have my state as our selection followed by field type market. Similarly for selection 2, we would like to have our state, field type and market. So for our line chart there, we would like to do comparison. We will pull in the year as our axis, and then what are the values. So we will use DAX measurement for our input values. So to do this, we will create new measurement. So let's call this selection one S1. So S1. What ours? What is our selection values? We will put in variables. For example, selection. Our selection is the values of Australia. It's the value of selection. Sorry. selection of selection ID, S1 ID. So whatever we select over here, for example, the state, market, and field type, it will sum it up in this unique column in the selection ID. So we just need to pull up the selection ID. So this selection ID will have all the information that we already selected over here. So we just click on this. And then what do we want to return? We would like to return we will return the sum of amount. So sum of our amount Australia sales table. Research this. So we will filter our fact table by what? So we will filter by our selection ID. So for our Australia sales table ID, we can filter this column with our selected column, which is our selection. Call it selection. And close. So this is the DAC measurement for our first selection. We'll do the same thing for selection 2. New measurement. So instead of S1, we'll call it S2. So our values will be in S2 table selection ID. And then the remaining will be the same. So for the line chart over here, now we can pull in the two value DAX measurement we created. We just need to pull in the values S1 and S2. So now everything is completed. So now I want to compare New South Wales, Northern Territory. I can do that. So I can compare with New South Wales, Northern Territory and Queensland. Yep. So within this, I can narrow down my selection and I can do comparison analysis or anything you want. So this is, I will show you another, what is the finished product. Usually a nicer finished product. So you will have all this information also over here. You can use bookmark to do your selection. So selection 1, what have you selected? You can easily view on your slicer. Similarly for selection 2, you can also view it over here. So this is how you do a comparison chart. So let's us review what we have done over here. So basically, we have a main table. So we will use the selection, our slicer selection columns. We'll create 2 tables from the slicer selection column. So we will do it over here. And then we will create a unique ID. We will create a unique ID for our selection and for our main table. And then what we do is we use DAX measurement to calculate what is the selection. What have we selected? So for this type of disconnected table, we don't need to do any relationship with our selection. That's all.